Welcome back. You're now listening to I Lost My Fiancé, Now I'm Forced to Marry a Billionaire Stranger to Save My Father Part 2. Kindly state in the comment section what part of the continent you're watching from. Let's connect. I couldn't stop thinking about Jessica Hartwell's blood on the ballroom floor. 3 days had passed since the gala, and the official story was that she'd slipped on spilled champagne and hit her head on a marble column. A tragic accident at a charity event. Nothing more sinister than designer heels on a wet floor. But I'd seen her eyes right before it happened, alert, focused, anything but the glazed look of someone about to fall. Someone had hurt her deliberately, and we all knew it. Mrs. Blackwell? Mrs. Kim's voice interrupted my brooding. Your lunch appointment is in an hour. Right. Another charity committee meeting, another performance in the endless theater of my life. But today would be different. Today, I had a plan. Actually, Mrs. Kim, I'm feeling unwell. Could you call and reschedule? I think I'll spend the day resting. Her expression showed mild concern but no suspicion. Of course. Should I inform Mr. Blackwell? No need to worry him. I'm sure it's just fatigue. After she left, I waited 20 minutes before slipping out through the mansion's service entrance. I'd discovered it during one of my sleepless nights, wandering the halls like a ghost. The door led to a small garden that connected to the staff parking area, the perfect escape route for a woman who needed answers. Detective Morrison had suggested meeting at a small cafe downtown, far from the society restaurants where I might be recognized. I'd chosen to take the subway, something the old Alara would never have considered but that Mrs. Dominic Blackwell could use to disappear into the city's anonymity. The cafe was exactly the kind of place I'd expected, worn leather booths, the smell of strong coffee, and clientele more interested in their newspapers than in whoever might be sitting at the next table. Detective Morrison was already there when I arrived, looking tired but alert. Mrs. Blackwell, he said, standing as I approached. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Neither was I admitted, sliding into the booth across from him. But after what happened at the gala. You think Jessica Hartwell's accident wasn't an accident? Do you? He was quiet for a moment, studying his coffee cup. In my experience, people who ask uncomfortable questions about closed cases tend to have accidents. The timing is interesting. What did she know? About Aaron, I mean. That's what I'm trying to figure out. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder, the second one I'd received in a week containing secrets about my life. These are copies of Aaron's phone records from his final month. The originals disappeared from the evidence room 6 months ago. My blood chilled. Disappeared, along with several other pieces of evidence from the case. But I'd made copies before they vanished. Call it paranoia, but 20 years on the force teaches you to cover your bases. He opened the folder and slid a sheet across the table. Phone numbers, times, dates, the digital breadcrumbs of Aaron's final weeks. Look at the number he called most frequently in those last 2 weeks, Detective Morrison said, pointing to a highlighted entry. I studied the number, my heart sinking as recognition dawned. That's Blackwell Corporation's main line. Aaron Cole called your husband's company 17 times in the 2 weeks before he died. Each conversation lasted between 15 and 45 minutes. The room seemed to tilt around me. He was in business with Dominic. It looks that way. But here's the interesting part. He pointed to another entry. The night he died, Aaron made one final call to that number at 9:47 p.m. The call lasted 3 minutes. 40 minutes later, he was found dead on 5th Street. I stared at the records, trying to process what I was seeing. You think Dominic called him out that night? I think Aaron Cole was supposed to meet someone. I think that someone was connected to Blackwell Corporation. And I think whoever he met killed him. But why? What could Aaron have done to deserve? I couldn't finish the sentence. Detective Morrison leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. That's where it gets interesting. I did some digging into Aaron's projects in those final weeks. He was working on something big, a mixed-use development that would have been worth hundreds of millions. I don't remember him mentioning anything like that. According to his assistant, he was keeping it quiet. Said it was too important to risk word getting out before the deal was finalized. Morrison pulled out another document. But here's the thing, the project required city permits that were nearly impossible to get. Unless you had the right connections. What kind of connections? The kind that Dominic Blackwell has in spades. Planning commission members, city council votes, zoning approvals, your husband owns half the decision makers in this city. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't want to see. So Aaron needed Dominic's help with the project. Or Dominic needed Aaron's architectural firm to front the project. Either way, they were partners. Until they weren't. What went wrong? That's the million-dollar question. But I have a theory. He pulled out a final document, a property deed. The development site Aaron was working on? It's prime real estate. Waterfront, perfect location, worth a fortune. But there was a problem. I looked at the deed, trying to understand its significance. What kind of problem? The kind that involves previous ownership disputes. Ugly ones. The kind that leave bodies in their wake. Before I could ask what he meant, Morrison's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. I have to go, he said, quickly gathering the documents. There's been another incident. What kind of incident? Jessica Hartwell was found dead in her apartment this morning. Apparent suicide. The words hit me like ice water. Suicide? That's what it's being called. But people who are about to testify against powerful men don't usually decide to end their lives the day before they're supposed to meet with police. He stood, leaving money on the table for his untouched coffee. Mrs. Blackwell, I need you to be very careful. Whatever game your husband is playing, it's deadly. And I'm starting to think you might be the next target. Why would he hurt me? I'm his wife. Maybe that's exactly the problem. After he left, I sat alone in the cafe, trying to process everything I'd learned. Aaron had been in business with Dominic. They'd been partners in some massive development project. And now everyone who knew about it was dead. Except me. I made it back to the mansion without being detected, or so I thought. But when I slipped through the service entrance, Dominic was waiting in the kitchen, leaning against the marble counter with predatory grace. How was lunch? He asked pleasantly. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't go to lunch. I wasn't feeling well. No? He held up his phone, and I saw a photo of myself entering the cafe downtown. Because my security team seems to think otherwise. Of course. He'd been having me followed. Probably since our wedding day. I went for a walk, I said weakly. A 40-minute subway ride to meet with Detective Morrison qualifies as a walk now? There was no point in lying anymore. How long have you known? That you've been investigating me? Since the day you married me. The question is what you've learned that's making you so reckless. I know about Aaron's project, about the phone calls, about the development deal. Something flickered in his pale eyes. Do you? I know you were partners. I know something went wrong. And I know Jessica Hartwell is dead because she was asking questions about it. Jessica Hartwell is dead because she couldn't leave well enough alone. The casual way he said it chilled me to the bone. Did you kill her too? No. But I know who did. Who? Instead of answering, he moved closer, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his eyes. Alara, there are things about this situation you don't understand. Dangerous things. People who would hurt you to get to me. Then tell me. Help me understand. Some truths are more dangerous than lies. You keep saying that, but what if I'm tired of lies? What if I want the truth, no matter how dangerous it is? He studied my face in the kitchen's soft lighting, and I saw something shift in his expression. A decision being made. All right, he said quietly. But not here. Too many ears. He led me through the mansion to a room I'd never seen before, his private study, hidden behind a bookshelf in his office. The space was intimate, masculine, lined with books and expensive whiskey. But what caught my attention was the wall covered with photographs and documents, connected by red string like something from a detective movie. "Welcome to my obsession," he said, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. I moved closer to the wall, studying the images. Pictures of Aaron, of me, of various buildings around the city, financial documents, property records, photographs of men I didn't recognize. And in the center of it all, a single word written in red ink, vengeance. "My God," I whispered. "How long have you been watching us?" 3 years. The admission hit me like a physical blow. 3 years? I told you I'd been watching you for a long time. But why? What did we ever do to you? He handed me one of the glasses, his fingers brushing mine. It's not what you did. It's what your fiancé stumbled into. The development project. Among other things. He gestured toward the wall. Aaron was a good architect, I'll give him that. But he was also idealistic. When he discovered what the project really involved, he threatened to expose everything. What did it really involve? Dominic took a long sip of his whiskey, then set the glass aside. Money laundering. Political corruption. The kind of real estate deals that require people to look the other way while dirty money gets clean. My legs felt weak. I sank into one of the leather chairs, trying to process what he was telling me. Aaron discovered you were using his project to launder money? Aaron discovered that his project was the centerpiece of an operation that's been running for decades. An operation that involves some of the most powerful people in the city. And you're part of it. I'm trying to destroy it. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. What? The development project, the money laundering, the political corruption, I've been working to bring it all down for 3 years. Aaron stumbled into the middle of my investigation. You're telling me you're one of the good guys? I'm telling you I'm trying to be. For the first time in my life. He moved to the wall of photographs and pointed to a picture of a man in his 60s with silver hair and cold eyes. Victor Santori. He runs the operation. Real estate development is just the cover. Underneath, he's been laundering money for international crime syndicates, bribing city officials, eliminating anyone who gets too close to the truth. Including Aaron. Including Aaron. When your fiancé threatened to go to the police with what he'd learned, Santori ordered his death. But you said you killed him. Dominic's jaw tightened. I did. I set down my glass with shaking hands. I don't understand. Santori ordered the hit. His people were going to make it look like a robbery gone wrong, torture Aaron for information about what he'd told the authorities, then kill him slowly. I couldn't let that happen. So you killed him first. I made it quick. Clean. He never knew what happened. The room spun around me. You killed my fiancé out of mercy? I killed him to save him from something worse. And to protect you. To protect me? Santori's people would have come for you next. Aaron's fiancé, the woman who might know what he'd discovered. I couldn't let that happen. I stood on unsteady legs, pacing to the window. Outside, the manicured gardens looked peaceful, normal. Nothing like the conversation we were having. So you killed Aaron to protect me, then married me to, what? Keep protecting me? To keep you close. To make sure Santori's people couldn't get to you. And to use our marriage as cover for my investigation. Cover? The grieving widow who married her husband's business partner? It's the perfect story. No one suspects that the happy couple is actually working to bring down a criminal empire. Working? I turned to face him. You expect me to help you? I expect you to want justice for Aaron's death. I want justice, not vigilante murder. Sometimes they're the same thing. I looked at the wall of evidence again, really seeing it for the first time. Financial records that would take months to compile. Photographs that suggested extensive surveillance. Documents that proved systematic corruption at the highest levels of city government. This is why you need a wife, I said slowly. Not for appearances. For access. Smart girl. The charity galas, the social events, the political dinners, you're using them to gather intelligence. I'm using them to get close to people who would never talk to Dominic Blackwell the businessman, but who love to gossip with Dominic Blackwell's charming wife. The scope of his deception was breathtaking. Our entire marriage was an elaborate undercover operation. And what happens when it's over? When you brought down Santori and his organization? Then you'll be free. Free to hate me for what I did to Aaron. Free to leave. Free to build whatever life you want. And you? I'll probably be dead. The casual way he said it stopped me cold. What do you mean? Men like Santori don't go quietly. When this is over, there will be a reckoning. And I don't expect to survive it. I stared at him, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. Not the cold businessman or the dangerous predator, but a man on a suicide mission, trying to atone for a lifetime of sins by taking down the system that had created him. Why? I asked quietly. Why risk everything for this? Because someone has to. And because... He paused, looking almost vulnerable. Because I want to be the kind of man who deserves a woman like you. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression hardened. We have a problem, he said. What kind of problem? The kind that involves you getting a package you're going to want to open, even though it might get you killed. He showed me his phone. It was a text from one of his security people, package delivered to main entrance. No return address. X-ray shows photographs inside. My blood ran cold. Photographs of what? That's what we're about to find out. We made our way to the front hall, where a manila envelope sat on the marble table like a cobra waiting to strike. Dominic's security team had cleared it for explosives, but we both knew the real danger lay in whatever images someone had felt compelled to share. With steady hands that belied the fear in his eyes, Dominic opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of photographs. The first one showed a man I recognized from Dominic's evidence wall, Victor Santori, shaking hands with a woman whose face was partially obscured. The second showed the same woman more clearly. The third showed me having coffee with Detective Morrison that morning. They know, I whispered. Yes. Dominic's voice was grim as he flipped through the remaining photos, images of our house, our daily routines, the routes I took when I thought I was being careful. They know everything. The final photograph made my blood turn to ice. It showed the mysterious woman from the previous images, but this time her face was clearly visible. It was Sarah Lee, the private investigator who'd approached me at the Literacy Foundation. The woman who'd given me evidence against my husband. The woman who'd claimed she was trying to help me. But in this photograph, she was clearly in business with Victor Santori, the man who'd ordered Aaron's death. She played me, I breathed. She played us both. Dominic's jaw was tight with controlled rage. The question is how long she's been playing us, and what she's really after. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call, his voice clipped and professional. When he hung up, his expression was grimmer than I'd ever seen it. My people can't locate Sarah Lee. Her office is empty, her apartment cleaned out. She's vanished. What does that mean? It means, he said quietly, that everything we thought we knew about this situation is wrong. And it means you're in more danger than either of us realized. As if summoned by his words, my phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. Enjoyed our little chat at the cafe. Your husband isn't the only one with secrets. Meet me at the Riverside construction site in 1 hour. Come alone, or Detective Morrison joins Aaron and Jessica. The blood drained from my face. They have Detective Morrison. Dominic read the message over my shoulder, his expression turning lethal. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap. But if I don't go, they'll kill him. If you do go, they'll kill you both. Then what do you suggest? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something shift in his pale eyes. A decision being made. A line being crossed. I suggest, he said quietly, that we give them exactly what they're expecting. And then we burn their world to the ground. The way he said it, with cold certainty and deadly promise, reminded me that beneath his careful facade, my husband was still a very dangerous man, and for the first time since I'd learned the truth about him, I was grateful for that danger. Because the people who'd killed Aaron and Jessica and taken Detective Morrison were about to learn that Dominic Blackwell didn't just protect what was his. He destroyed anyone who tried to take it away. The riverside construction site looked like a graveyard of broken dreams in the fading afternoon light. Steel beams jutted from concrete foundations like the bones of some massive beast, and construction equipment sat abandoned as if the workers had fled in the middle of their shift. This was Aaron's project. The development that had gotten him killed. I sat in the passenger seat of Dominic's Bentley, watching the empty site through binoculars while he coordinated with his security team through a nearly invisible earpiece. "We've been here for 20 minutes, waiting, watching, planning. I count 3 vehicles," Dominic murmured, his voice barely audible. 2 black SUVs and what looks like Detective Morrison's sedan. They have the high ground, the construction trailer gives them a clear view of all approaches. My hand shook as I lowered the binoculars. This is insane. We should call the FBI, the state police, someone with actual authority. Authority? His laugh was bitter. Alara, half the city government is on Santori's payroll. You think the people we're fighting don't have friends in law enforcement? Then what's your plan? Walk in there and shoot everyone? Something like that. I stared at him, looking for any sign that he was joking. There wasn't one. You're serious. I'm practical. He checked his watch. You have 15 minutes before the deadline. Time enough for you to get in position while I handle the real threat. What position? He pointed to a service road that curved around the back of the construction site. There's a maintenance shed about 200 yards from the trailer. You'll wait there until I give the all clear. Absolutely not. I'm not hiding while you. While I what? While I clean up the mess that started with Aaron's death? His pale eyes were hard as winter ice. This isn't a negotiation, Alara. This is me keeping you alive. And what about Detective Morrison? What about keeping him alive? Morrison knew the risks when he started investigating this case. You didn't sign up for any of this. The casual dismissal of an innocent man's life made my temper flare. Neither did Aaron. Neither did Jessica. But they're dead anyway. Yes. They are. And I'm not letting you join them. Before I could argue further, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The display showed only a number, but his expression darkened when he saw it. Santori, he said, answering on speaker. Mr. Blackwell. The voice was cultured, grandfatherly, completely at odds with what I knew about its owner. I trust you and your lovely wife are enjoying this beautiful afternoon? What do you want? What I've always wanted. What should have been mine 3 years ago, before your fiancé's unfortunate curiosity complicated things. I felt Dominic tense beside me. Your fiancé. Not her fiancé. Your fiancé. I don't know what you're talking about, Dominic said carefully. Of course you don't. Santori's chuckle was warm, indulgent. Just like you don't know why Aaron Cole was really at that construction site the night he died. Just like you don't know what he found there. My blood ran cold. Aaron had been at the construction site? But the police said he'd been found on 5th Street, miles away. Enlighten me, Dominic said. Aaron discovered something that night. Something that would have destroyed not just my operation, but several very powerful people who prefer to remain in the shadows. He took photographs, made copies of documents, gathered enough evidence to bring down half the city government. And he hid it. Somewhere safe, somewhere only his beloved fiancé would think to look. The words hit me like a physical blow. Aaron had hidden evidence? Evidence that could expose Santori's entire operation? That's impossible, I said, my voice barely steady. The police searched everywhere. His office, his apartment, his car. But not the places that mattered to him personally. Not the locations that held sentimental value for a man planning to propose to the woman he loved. Planning to propose. But Aaron had already proposed. We'd been engaged for 6 months before he died. Unless, he was going to propose again, I whispered, the memory hitting me like lightning. He'd been acting strange, secretive. I thought he was planning something for our anniversary. Smart girl, Santori said approvingly. Aaron Cole was indeed planning something special. A new proposal, complete with a custom ring and a location that meant something to both of you. He just never got the chance to carry it out. Dominic's grip on the phone tightened. What does any of this have to do with my wife? Your wife, Mr. Blackwell, is the key to recovering what Aaron hid. She knows him better than anyone. She knows where he would have gone to feel safe, to feel romantic, to plan a perfect moment. And if she finds this evidence? Then she trades it for Detective Morrison's life. And everyone walks away from this unpleasant situation. What guarantee do we have that you'll honor that deal? The same guarantee Aaron had when he tried to make a similar arrangement with me. The implication was clear. Aaron had tried to negotiate with Santori and ended up dead. We were walking into the same trap that had killed my fiancé. 1 hour, Santori continued. The construction trailer. Come alone, Mrs. Blackwell, or the good detective learns why they call it a hit and run. The line went dead, leaving us in suffocating silence. He knew Aaron was going to propose again, I said, my mind racing. How could he know that? Because someone told him. Someone close to Aaron, someone he trusted. Who? Instead of answering, Dominic pulled out his tablet and showed me a series of photographs from his investigation wall. Images of people I recognized, Aaron's colleagues, friends, people who'd been part of our social circle. Look at these again, he said. Really look at them. I studied the faces, trying to see what he saw. There was Jessica Hartwell, Aaron's colleague who'd approached us at the gala. There was Robert Chan, Aaron's business partner. There was, my breath caught. That's my father. In the photograph, my father was shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize, but their body language suggested familiarity, partnership. The timestamp showed the meeting had taken place 2 weeks before Aaron's death. Your father has been in financial trouble for longer than he told you, Dominic said quietly. The company was failing long before Aaron died. He needed a way out. You're saying my father was involved in Aaron's murder? I'm saying your father made a deal with people who don't honor deals. And now those same people want to use you to clean up the mess he helped create. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own father, the man who'd raised me alone after my mother's death, who'd walked me down the aisle weeks ago with tears in his eyes, he'd been working with Aaron's killers. No, I said, shaking my head. No, that's impossible. He loved Aaron like a son. He loved his company more. Before I could process this latest revelation, Dominic's earpiece crackled with static. One of his security team was reporting movement at the construction site. What is it? I asked. 3 more vehicles just arrived. This isn't just about recovering evidence anymore, they're planning something bigger. Like what? Like cleaning up all the loose ends at once. You, me, Morrison, anyone who knows the truth about what really happened to Aaron. I closed my eyes, trying to think past the fear and betrayal and crushing weight of everything I'd learned. Aaron had hidden evidence that could expose a massive criminal conspiracy. My father was involved with the people who'd killed him. And now they wanted me to find that evidence so they could destroy it along with anyone who knew it existed. I know where he hid it, I said suddenly. Dominic looked at me sharply. Where? The botanical gardens. There's a gazebo where we had our first date, where he first told me he loved me. He was always sentimental about that place. If he was planning another proposal, if he wanted somewhere that felt safe and romantic, that's where he would have hidden the evidence. But we can't get there and back before the deadline. It's across town, and with traffic. We're not going there. Dominic's expression was grim with determination. You are. While I handle Santori. I am not leaving you to face those people alone. And I am not letting you walk into a trap that's designed to kill you. We stared at each other across the car's leather interior, two people who'd started as strangers and somehow become partners in the most dangerous game either of us had ever played. There has to be another way, I said. There is. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Marcus? I need you to do something for me. Something that might save a lot of lives or get us all killed. Whatever he said to his assistant made the man's voice rise in alarm, but Dominic cut him off with sharp efficiency. Just do it. We don't have time to debate the ethics. When he hung up, he looked at me with something that might have been an apology. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For what I'm about to ask you to do. And for what I'm about to do to keep you safe. Before I could ask what he meant, he was reaching for something in the glove compartment. A syringe filled with clear liquid. Dominic, what? It's a mild sedative. You'll be unconscious for about an hour, long enough for me to handle Santori and get Morrison out alive. You are not drugging me. I'm saving your life. I lunged for the door handle, but he was faster, stronger. His arms came around me, holding me still despite my struggles. Let me go. I can't. I won't watch another person I love die because of this mess. Another person I love. The words should have meant something, should have softened the betrayal I felt at his actions. Instead, they only made my anger burn hotter. If you love me, you'll trust me to make my own choices. If I love you, I'll do whatever it takes to keep you alive. Even if you hate me for it. The needle pricked my arm before I could stop him. Almost immediately, I felt the world starting to blur around the edges. You bastard, I whispered, my voice already slurring. Yes, he agreed quietly. But you'll be alive to call me that tomorrow. As consciousness faded, I heard him making another phone call, his voice urgent but controlled. Sarah? It's me. I know you're working with Santori, and I know what you really want. Meet me at the construction site in 30 minutes. Come alone, and I'll give you everything, the evidence, the investigation, my life if that's what it takes. But you leave Alara out of this. The last thing I heard before darkness claimed me was the sound of his car door slamming and his footsteps walking away into danger. When I woke up, I was in the back of another car, my head pounding and my mouth dry as cotton. Sunlight was streaming through the windows, which meant I'd been unconscious for hours, not the single hour Dominic had promised. Good, you're awake. I turned toward the voice and felt my blood turn to ice. My father sat in the seat beside me, his face older and more tired than I'd ever seen it, his hands shaking as he reached for a bottle of water. Dad? My voice was a croak. What are you doing here? Where's Dominic? Drink this, he said, offering me the water. You'll feel better in a few minutes. Where is my husband? Dead, most likely. His voice was flat, emotionless. Along with Detective Morrison and anyone else who thought they could interfere with forces beyond their understanding. The casual way he said it made me want to vomit. You're working with them. With the people who killed Aaron. I'm trying to save what's left of our family. By betraying the man I was going to marry? By lying to me for months? By helping them murder innocent people? By doing whatever it takes to survive. His composure cracked, revealing the desperate man underneath. You think I wanted this? You think I chose to work with criminals and killers? I was backed into a corner, Alara. The company was failing, we were going to lose everything, and they offered me a way out. A way out that required Aaron's death. Aaron stumbled into something he should have left alone. If he'd just taken their money and kept quiet, none of this would have happened. But he couldn't do that, could he? Because he was a good man. Because he had principles you apparently never taught me to value. Dad flinched as if I'd slapped him. Don't you dare judge me. Everything I've done has been to protect you. Protect me? You handed me over to a man you thought was a killer. You walked me down the aisle to marry someone you believed had murdered my fiancé. I thought Blackwell would keep you safe. I thought if you were his wife, Santori's people would leave you alone. Instead, you put me right in the middle of their war. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of betrayal and broken trust settling between us like a physical presence. Where are we going? I asked finally. Somewhere safe. Somewhere Santori can't reach us. You mean somewhere I can't interfere with whatever he's planning? Dad didn't deny it. The evidence Aaron hid, they needed destroyed. And they need you to help them find it. What if I refuse? Then a lot of people die. Starting with your husband, assuming he's still alive. The casual cruelty in his voice was like nothing I'd ever heard from the man who'd raised me. This wasn't my father, this was a stranger wearing his face, speaking with his voice, but without any of the love or warmth I'd known my entire life. He's not really dead, is he? I said suddenly, that's why you're taking me somewhere. Because Santori still needs something from me, and dead husbands don't make good leverage. Dad's silence was answer enough. What does he want? What he's always wanted. The evidence Aaron collected, and your silence about everything you've learned. And in exchange? In exchange, you get to live. You and Dominic both. You disappear, change your names, start over somewhere far from here. It's more than most people in your position get. I stared out the car window at the passing city, trying to reconcile this conversation with the man I thought I knew. The man who'd read me bedtime stories, who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd cried at my high school graduation. You know what the saddest part is? I said finally. What? Aaron was right to trust you. Even knowing what he'd discovered, even knowing how dangerous it was, he still believed you'd protect me if something happened to him. That's why he didn't tell me about the evidence, because he thought you'd keep me safe. Dad's hands tightened on the water bottle. I am keeping you safe. No. You're trading me like currency to buy your way out of the consequences of your own choices. Elara. Don't. I turned away from him, focusing on the city skyline in the distance. Don't try to justify this. We both know what you've done. The car turned onto a highway I didn't recognize, heading toward what looked like an industrial district on the city's outskirts. Wherever we were going, it was far from the manicured gardens and marble halls of my new life as Mrs. Blackwell. One more question, I said as the miles rolled past. What? When did they first approach you? When did you first agree to betray Aaron? Dad was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. The day after you got engaged, the words hit me like a physical blow. The day after? They knew about Aaron's project. They knew he was getting close to discovering their operation. And they knew that hurting you would be the perfect way to control him. So you helped them. So I tried to find a middle path. A way to keep everyone alive while giving them what they wanted. And how did that work out? His silence was answer enough. As we drove deeper into the industrial wasteland, I realized that my father had been planning this for over a year. Every dinner we'd shared, every phone call, every moment of apparent concern for my well-being, all of it had been performed while he secretly worked with the people who were planning to kill the man I loved. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I almost couldn't process it. Almost. But as we pulled into the parking lot of an abandoned warehouse, as I saw the black SUVs waiting like mechanical vultures, as I realized that this was where my choices would finally run out, one thought crystallized in my mind with perfect clarity. If I was going to die today, I was going to make sure the truth died with me. Because whatever evidence Aaron had hidden, wherever he'd concealed the proof of Santori's crimes, I would take that secret to my grave before I'd help these people destroy it. It was the least I could do for the man I'd failed to save. And maybe, if I was very lucky, it would be enough to save the one I'd learned to love. The abandoned warehouse smelled like rust and broken dreams. I sat in a metal chair in what had once been an office, my hands zip-tied behind my back, watching Victor Santori pace behind a desk that had seen better decades. He was smaller than I'd expected, a grandfatherly man in an expensive suit who looked like he should be teaching literature at some prestigious university rather than running a criminal empire. You're disappointed, he said, noticing my expression. People always are when they meet me. They expect someone more theatrical. I expect someone who doesn't murder innocent people. Innocent. He chuckled, settling into the chair across from me. Mrs. Blackwell, there are very few innocent people in this story. Certainly not your husband, not your father, and, I'm sorry to say, not your late fiancé. Aaron was a good man. Aaron Cole was an idealistic fool who thought he could single-handedly bring down an operation that's been running for 30 years. Do you know what happens to idealistic fools in this business? They get murdered by cowards who hide behind other people's violence. His smile was cold, reptilian. They get themselves killed by refusing to understand the bigger picture. Through the office's grimy windows, I could see my father standing with two of Santori's men near a black SUV. Even from this distance, he looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of his betrayals. "Where's Detective Morrison?" I asked. "Safe. For now. As is your husband, assuming he's smart enough to stay away from the construction site." "What do you mean?" "I mean the meeting at Riverside was never about Detective Morrison. It was about drawing your husband out of his fortress and into the open. He's been surprisingly difficult to eliminate, you know. All that security, all those precautions. But love makes people reckless." My blood turned to ice. It was a trap. Everything has been a trap, my dear. From the moment your husband started his little investigation 3 years ago, he's been dancing to music I composed. 3 years? The timeline didn't make sense. But you said Aaron only discovered your operation in the weeks before he died. Aaron stumbled into the edges of it, yes. But your husband? Your husband has been hunting me much longer than that. Santori stood and walked to a filing cabinet, pulling out a manila folder thick with documents. He spread them across the desk like a dealer laying out cards. "Allow me to tell you a story about the man you married," he said. "A story about revenge, obsession, and the dangerous lengths people will go to for justice." The first document was a death certificate. Maria Eliana Blackwell, age 28, cause of death, vehicular homicide. Dominic's sister, Santori explained, killed 5 years ago in what the police called a hit-and-run accident. Sound familiar? My heart hammered against my ribs. You killed his sister? I ordered her death, yes. She'd discovered some financial irregularities in a company I controlled, threatened to go to the authorities. Much like your Aaron, actually. The similarities are quite remarkable. So Dominic has been after you since then. Oh, he's been after me much longer than that. Maria's death was simply the final straw. He pulled out another document, a newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. Dominic's parents. Car accident on a mountain road. Very tragic. Very convenient. I stared at the yellowed newsprint, trying to process what he was telling me. You killed his entire family? I eliminated obstacles to my business. The Blackwells had an unfortunate tendency to ask inconvenient questions and refuse reasonable offers of cooperation. And Dominic knows you're responsible? Dominic has known for 3 years. Ever since he hired the right private investigator and found the connections the police were paid to overlook. Sarah Lee. The pieces clicked into place with horrible clarity. Sarah Lee was working for him. Sarah Lee was working for whoever paid her the most. Which, for the past 6 months, has been me. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Sarah hadn't been trying to help me, she'd been feeding information to both sides, playing everyone against each other for maximum profit. She told you about Aaron's evidence. She told me about your husband's investigation. About his plans to use Aaron's architectural firm as cover for getting close to my operation. About his growing obsession with the woman who was engaged to his unwitting ally. Obsession? Santori smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen. Oh my dear, did you really think your marriage was about business? Your husband has been watching you for 3 years. Ever since he learned that Aaron Cole was engaged to the daughter of one of my business associates. The room seemed to tilt around me. What are you saying? I'm saying Dominic Blackwell didn't marry you to protect you from me. He married you because he's been in love with you since the day he first saw your photograph in Aaron's office. The words hit me like bullets, each one designed to shatter something essential. That's impossible. Is it? Think about it, Mrs. Blackwell. A man with unlimited resources, with the connections to arrange any kind of marriage he wanted, chooses to marry a grieving woman he'd supposedly never met. A woman whose fiancé had been investigating his target. A woman whose father owed the right kind of debts to make a marriage arrangement seem reasonable. You're lying. I'm illuminating. Your husband orchestrated Aaron's involvement in my operation. He fed him information, guided his investigation, made sure he discovered exactly what Dominic wanted him to find. Why would he do that? Because he needed Aaron to get close enough to my organization to gather evidence. And because he needed Aaron dead to clear the way for his own relationship with you. The accusation hung in the air between us, poisonous and devastating. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Dominic's motives, about Aaron's death, all of it was crumbling under the weight of Santori's revelations. You're saying Dominic used Aaron to get to you, then killed him to get to me. I'm saying your husband is a very patient man who's been playing a very long game. I don't believe you, don't you? Santori pulled out a final document, a surveillance photograph showing Dominic standing outside my apartment building. The timestamp showed it had been taken 2 years ago, months before Aaron's death. He's been watching you for a very long time, Mrs. Blackwell. Learning your routines, your preferences, your vulnerabilities. Planning the perfect approach. I stared at the photograph, my mind reeling. 2 years ago, when Aaron and I had been happy, planning our future, completely unaware that we were being watched by a man who wanted to destroy our lives to get revenge on someone else. This is why Aaron had to die, Santori continued. Not because he discovered my operation, but because he was in the way of what your husband really wanted. You. Then why didn't Dominic kill Aaron himself? Why use you? Because he needed someone else to take the blame. And because he needed you to hate the right person. The logic was horrifying in its clarity. By letting Santori's people kill Aaron, Dominic had positioned himself as my protector rather than my enemy. He'd married me to save me from the very man he'd deliberately led to Aaron's doorstep. There's more, Santori said, enjoying my growing horror. The evidence Aaron hid? Your husband knows exactly where it is. He's known all along. How is that possible? Because he told Aaron where to hide it. The revelation hit me like ice water. What? The botanical gardens, the romantic gazebo where you had your first date. Your husband suggested that location to Aaron during one of their many secret meetings. He told him it would be the perfect place to hide evidence, somewhere personal and meaningful that only someone who truly knew you would think to look. But that means your husband has been manipulating every aspect of this situation from the beginning. Aaron's investigation, his death, your grief, your marriage, all of it has been orchestrated by the man who claims to love you. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out Santori's words, but the pieces fit together with horrible precision. Dominic's knowledge about Aaron's project. His immediate marriage proposal after my father's company failed. His wall of evidence that seemed too comprehensive for someone who'd only started investigating recently. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I want you to understand what you're really choosing between. Your husband isn't the hero in this story, Mrs. Blackwell. He's just another kind of monster. And you? I'm a businessman who eliminates problems. Your husband is a sociopath who destroys lives to satisfy his obsessions. The distinction felt academic when both men had Aaron's blood on their hands. What do you want from me? The same thing I've always wanted. The evidence Aaron collected, destroyed. Your silence about everything you've learned. And your cooperation in ending your husband's vendetta against me. My cooperation? Dominic Blackwell will walk into any trap, face any danger, to save your life. You're going to help me use that against him. Before I could respond, one of Santori's men appeared in the office doorway. Sir? We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that involves explosions at the Riverside site and half our security team not checking in. Santori's expression darkened. What about Blackwell? Gone. Along with Detective Morrison and most of our surveillance equipment. My heart leaped with hope. Dominic was alive. Not only alive, but apparently winning whatever battle was being fought across the city. How is that possible? Santori demanded. We're not sure, sir. But we've got reports of federal agents at 3 different locations connected to the operation. Someone's been feeding information to law enforcement. The blood drained from Santori's face. Federal agents? FBI, DEA, possibly others. They've got warrants, wiretaps, surveillance footage. Someone gave them everything. Santori's eyes snapped to me with sudden understanding. The journalist. What journalist? The one who's been investigating me for months. The one who disappeared right before Jessica Hartwell's accident. He pulled out his phone and made a rapid call. Sarah? Where the hell are you? The conversation that followed was brief, angry, and illuminating. Sarah Lee hadn't just been playing both sides, she'd been playing all sides, gathering information for the highest bidder while secretly working with federal investigators. She's gone, Santori said when he hung up. Vanished with enough evidence to destroy everything. Which means we're all out of time. He turned to his man in the doorway. Move her. Now. Where? Somewhere your husband will be forced to come alone. Somewhere we can finish this once and for all. As they cut my restraints and hauled me to my feet, I caught sight of my father through the window. He was arguing with one of Santori's men, gesturing frantically, clearly upset about something. When he saw me being moved, his face crumpled with what looked like genuine remorse. Too little, too late. Mrs. Blackwell, Santori said as they pushed me toward the door, I want you to remember something as we move to the final phase of this game. What's that? Your husband isn't coming to save you out of love. He's coming because you're the last piece of evidence he needs to destroy to cover up his own crimes. What crimes? The crime of orchestrating Aaron Cole's death. The crime of manipulating a grieving woman into marriage under false pretenses. The crime of using federal resources for personal vengeance. Federal resources? Santori's smile was triumphant. Oh yes, my dear. Your husband isn't just a businessman seeking justice. He's been working with the FBI for 2 years, feeding them information about my operation while pursuing his own agenda. Those federal agents who just raided my properties? They're his colleagues. The revelation hit me like a sledgehammer. Dominic worked for the FBI. Everything, our marriage, his investigation, his protection of me, had been a federal operation from the beginning. He's been using you as bait, Santori continued as they loaded me into another black SUV. The grieving fiancé who might lead them to hidden evidence, the perfect asset to get close to people like your father who were already compromised. That's not true. Isn't it? Think about it. A federal agent with unlimited resources, a personal vendetta, and access to surveillance equipment that would make the NSA jealous. How else would he know so much about your daily routine, your emotional state, your vulnerabilities? As the SUV pulled out of the warehouse parking lot, I saw my father getting into another vehicle, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Even from this distance, he looked like a broken man. But I couldn't feel sorry for him, not anymore. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere meaningful. Somewhere your husband agent will have to choose between completing his mission and saving your life. The botanical gardens. Very good. Aaron's evidence, your sentimental attachment to the location, and enough open ground to ensure that any rescue attempt will be visible from a considerable distance. The pieces of the trap were falling into place with mechanical precision. Santori would use me to draw Dominic into the open, then eliminate both of us along with any evidence of his crimes. Clean, simple, effective, except for one thing he didn't know. During the chaos at the warehouse, while his men were dealing with reports of federal raids and missing personnel, I'd managed to send a text from the phone one of them had carelessly left within reach. Botanical Gardens. Aaron's gazebo. Evidence is in the fountain's base stone, third one from the left. Tell the FBI. Tell everyone. Because if Santori was right about Dominic being a federal agent, then there would be other agents. Backup. People whose job it was to ensure that operations like this didn't end with dead civilians and destroyed evidence. And if Santori was lying, if Dominic really was just a man seeking justice for his murdered family, then at least the truth about Aaron's evidence would survive even if neither of us did. As we drove through the city toward what might be my final confrontation, I thought about Aaron. About the man he'd been, the future we'd planned, the love that had been real even if everything around it had been manipulation. He'd died trying to expose the truth. The least I could do was make sure his sacrifice hadn't been in vain. Even if it killed me. Especially if it killed me. Because sometimes the only way to win a game is to refuse to play by the rules everyone else has agreed to follow. And I was done playing by anyone's rules but my own. The botanical gardens at sunset looked like a painting from a dream I'd once had. Golden light filtered through ancient trees, casting long shadows across manicured paths that wound between flower beds I'd walked with Aaron a lifetime ago. The gazebo where we'd had our first date sat like a white jewel at the garden's heart, surrounded by the fountain where my dead fiancé had apparently hidden evidence that could bring down a criminal empire. I sat on a stone bench 20 feet from the gazebo, my hands zip-tied behind my back again, watching Santori's men take positions around the garden's perimeter. They'd chosen their spots well, behind trees, near maintenance sheds, along pathways that offered clear sight lines and multiple escape routes. This wasn't just a trap. This was an execution ground. Beautiful evening for a reunion, Santori said, settling onto the bench beside me with the casual air of a grandfather taking his granddaughter to feed the ducks. I do hope your husband appreciates the romantic setting. He'll come, I said, though I wasn't sure if I was stating a fact or making a prayer. Of course he will. The question is whether he'll come alone or bring half the FBI with him. Would it matter? Not really. I have contingencies for both scenarios. Through the trees, I could see the garden's main entrance where a black sedan had been parked since we'd arrived. Inside were two of Santori's men with enough firepower to turn the peaceful gardens into a war zone. Similar vehicles were positioned at the other entrances, creating a perimeter that would be nearly impossible to breach without triggering a bloodbath. You're going to kill innocent people, I said. I'm going to eliminate threats to my organization. If some of those threats happen to be federal agents, well, that's the price of working in law enforcement. And me? What's the price of being used as bait? You? Santori's smile was almost gentle. You get to serve a purpose larger than yourself. Your death will ensure that certain secrets stay buried and that the people responsible for Aaron Cole's murder face appropriate consequences. You're responsible for Aaron's murder. I gave the order, yes. But your husband created the circumstances that made that order necessary. The distinction felt academic when I was the one sitting with my hands tied, waiting to die for sins I'd never committed. My phone, which they'd left in my purse after checking for GPS tracking, buzzed with incoming messages. The mass text I'd sent from the warehouse had apparently reached its targets. Friends, former colleagues, distant relatives, all responding with confusion, concern, and increasingly urgent suggestions that I call the police. Popular girl, Santori observed, glancing at my bag. I do hope none of your correspondents are foolish enough to call the authorities. Would it matter? You said the FBI already knows about this place. The FBI knows what your husband has chosen to tell them. Which may or may not include the complete truth about his motivations. A sound from the garden's eastern entrance made both of us turn. A figure was walking along the main path, moving with the confident stride of someone who belonged there. Even from this distance, I recognized the silhouette. Dominic. He was alone, dressed in dark jeans and a black jacket, his hands visible and empty. No obvious weapons, no backup, no indication that this was anything other than a man walking into certain death to save his wife. Right on time, Santori murmured. I do admire punctuality. Dominic stopped about 30 feet from our bench, close enough for conversation but far enough to make any sudden moves impossible. In the fading light, his pale eyes seemed to glow with inner fire. "Santori," he said, his voice carrying clearly across the distance between us. "Agent Blackwell," Santori replied, and I felt my heart stop. Agent Blackwell. So it was true. My husband really was working for the FBI. "Actually," Dominic said, pulling something from his jacket, "it's just Mr. Blackwell now." He tossed an object onto the ground between us. It landed with a metallic clink that seemed to echo off the surrounding trees. "An FBI badge. Resigned this morning," Dominic continued. "Turns out the Bureau frowns on agents who use federal resources for personal vendettas. How noble of you to develop ethics at this late stage. Better late than never." They faced each other across the garden like gunfighters in an old western, two men whose history stretched back through years of violence and loss. The air between them practically hummed with tension. "You killed my family," Dominic said quietly. "You've been trying to kill me for 3 years." "Yes. I have." The simple admission hung in the evening air like a death sentence. "And now?" Santori asked. "Now I finish what I started. Even if it costs your wife her life?" Dominic's eyes shifted to me for the first time since arriving. What I saw there was love, regret, and a pain so deep it seemed to reach into his soul. "Elara," he said softly. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For everything. For Aaron's death. For lying to you about who I was and why I married you. For putting you in danger to serve my own need for revenge." "So it's true?" "Everything Santori said?" "Most of it." His voice was steady, but I could see the cost of honesty in his face. "I did orchestrate Aaron's involvement in this investigation. I did guide him toward discovering Santori's operation. And I did know that it would probably get him killed." The admission hit like a physical blow. "You used him?" "Yes." "And you used me?" "Yes." "And you married me too. To keep you close while I finished destroying the man who murdered my family. To use your grief and your father's debts to create the perfect cover for my investigation. To manipulate you into helping me get revenge." Each word was a knife in my chest. "Did any of it mean anything to you? Our marriage, our conversations, the way you—" I couldn't finish. "The way I touched you? The way I kissed you? The way I told you I loved you?" His voice broke slightly. "That was the only real thing in this entire mess. Everything else was calculation and manipulation and lies. But what I feel for you, that's the truest thing I've ever experienced." "How convenient." "No," he said quietly. "How devastating." Santori cleared his throat, interrupting our painful reunion. "Touching as this confession is, we have business to conclude. Excuse me, former Agent Blackwell, you've caused considerable damage to my organization. Federal raids, frozen assets, key personnel in custody. I'm afraid the price for such interference is quite high." "Name it." "Your life. And hers. And the permanent burial of whatever evidence Aaron Cole managed to hide before his unfortunate accident. The evidence is already in federal custody." "Is it?" Santori's smile was coldly triumphant. "Because my sources suggest otherwise. My sources suggest that particular cache of documents is still exactly where Aaron left it, waiting for someone with the right emotional connection to retrieve it." "Then your sources are wrong." "Are they? Shall we test that theory?" Santori gestured toward the fountain, where 2 of his men were now standing with sledgehammers, ready to destroy the stonework that concealed Aaron's hidden evidence. "Stop," I said suddenly. Both men looked at me in surprise. "The evidence isn't there," I continued. "Aaron moved it after he hit it the first time. He was paranoid about security, especially after he started getting threatening phone calls. It was a lie, but a convincing one. Aaron had never been particularly paranoid, and I had no idea whether he'd moved the evidence or not. But I needed to buy time, to create some kind of advantage in a situation where we had none. Moved it where? Santori demanded. I don't know. He said it was somewhere only I would think to look, but he died before he could tell me the location. You're lying. Am I? Then go ahead and smash those fountain stones. See what you find. Santori studied my face, looking for tells, for any sign that I was bluffing. After a moment, he gestured to his men to stand down. Where? He asked again. I'll tell you after you let Detective Morrison go. Detective Morrison is already dead. The words hit me like ice water. What? Shot while trying to escape. Very tragic. Very permanent. Dominic's hands clenched into fists, but he held his position. You didn't have to kill him. I didn't have to do a lot of things, but they served my interests. Just as killing your wife will serve my interests now. She doesn't know anything useful. She's not a threat to you. She's a threat to the narrative I need to maintain. The narrative where you're a rogue federal agent who got too close to my operation and had to be eliminated along with any witnesses to your investigation. And what narrative is that? The one where Victor Santori is a respectable businessman who was targeted by a corrupt FBI agent seeking personal revenge for his family's deaths in unrelated accidents. The scope of his planning was breathtaking. By killing us both and destroying Aaron's evidence, Santori would not only eliminate the immediate threat to his organization but also discredit any future investigations by framing them as continuations of Dominic's rogue operation. Brilliant, Dominic said quietly. Except for one problem. What problem? You assume I came here alone. Santori's expression shifted slightly, the first crack in his confident facade. You resigned from the bureau. You have no official backup. No. But I do have friends, people who believe that some things are worth dying for, even when they're not strictly legal. As if summoned by his words, figures began emerging from the shadows around the garden's perimeter. Not federal agents in official gear, but men and women in civilian clothing, all armed, all moving with the precise coordination of people who'd worked together before. Marcus, I breathed, recognizing Dominic's assistant among the approaching figures. Among others, Dominic confirmed. People who've been touched by Santori's organization over the years, people who want justice even if they can't get it through official channels. Vigilantes, Santori spat. Citizens. The standoff had shifted from two men facing each other to two small armies preparing for war in a place that had once symbolized peace and new beginnings for me and Aaron. This won't work, Santori said, but his voice had lost its confident edge. Too many witnesses, too much exposure. You'll never get away with it. Maybe not, Dominic agreed. But you won't get away at all. I have your wife. And I have something you want more than her life. What's that? Dominic reached into his other jacket pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Aaron's real evidence. The documents he copied, the photographs he took, the financial records that prove your organization's connection to political corruption, money laundering, and murder going back 30 years. Impossible. That evidence is still hidden. Is it? Dominic's smile was sharp as a blade. Aaron Cole was many things, but he wasn't stupid. He made copies of everything before he hid the originals. Copies that he gave to his business partner for safekeeping. Robert Lee is dead. Robert Lee gave the copies to his daughter before you killed him. His daughter who's been working as a private investigator under the name Sarah Lee. The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. Sarah Lee hadn't been playing multiple sides for profit, she'd been undercover, gathering evidence about her father's murder while working to bring down the organization responsible for it. She's been feeding information to federal investigators for months, Dominic continued. Everything you've told her, every move you've made, every crime you've committed, it's all been recorded, documented, and transmitted to people who will ensure that justice is served whether we survive this encounter or not. Santori's face had gone ashen. Where is she? Somewhere you'll never find her. With enough evidence to destroy not just your organization but everyone connected to it. That's impossible. Is it? How do you think the federal raids happened so quickly today? How do you think they knew exactly which properties to target, which assets to freeze, which personnel to arrest? The answer was written in Santori's expression, the growing realization that his carefully constructed empire was already crumbling around him. Even if that's true, he said desperately, I still have her. I still have the one thing you value more than your revenge. Yes, Dominic said quietly. You do. The resignation in his voice chilled me to the bone. He was going to let Santori kill me rather than risk compromising the investigation that had already destroyed the criminal organization. He was choosing justice over love. Dominic, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, he said again, and this time the pain in his voice was unmistakable. Santori's men were raising their weapons, preparing for the final act of a drama that had been years in the making. Around the garden's perimeter, Dominic's people were doing the same, creating a crossfire that would turn the peaceful gardens into a killing field. That's when I heard it, the sound that changed everything. Sirens. Dozens of them, converging on the gardens from every direction. Federal agents, a voice boomed through a megaphone. Nobody move. This area is surrounded. Santori's face twisted with rage and confusion. How? I looked at Dominic and saw something I'd never seen before, surprise. Real, genuine surprise. The text, I realized. The mass text I sent from the warehouse. Someone called the FBI. What text? Santori demanded. The one where I told everyone I knew about Aaron's evidence, about this meeting, about everything that's been happening. I looked around at the chaos beginning to unfold as federal agents stormed into the gardens. The one where I told them to contact the authorities and tell them where to find us. Santori's carefully planned execution was dissolving into a federal crime scene. His men were dropping their weapons and raising their hands as agents appeared from every direction, surrounding the gazebo like a SWAT team taking down a terrorist cell. In the confusion, Dominic moved. He crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides, sliding a knife from his sleeve to cut my restraints as Santori fumbled for the gun in his jacket. Get down, Dominic ordered, pushing me behind the stone bench as gunfire erupted around us. The battle was brief but intense. Santori's men, outnumbered and surrendered quickly rather than face a shooting war they couldn't win. But Santori himself had vanished in the chaos, slipping away through the gardens like smoke. When the shooting stopped, Dominic and I were alone behind the bench, both breathing hard, both alive against all odds. Is it over? I asked. For now, he said. But Santori's still out there. Will they catch him? Eventually. He can't run forever, and he can't rebuild what Sarah Lee helped us destroy. I looked at my husband, my lying, manipulative, revenge-obsessed husband who'd just saved my life, and tried to figure out what I was supposed to feel. What happens now? I asked. Now you decide whether you can forgive me for what I've done, and whether you want to stay married to a man who's spent the last 3 years lying to you about everything that mattered. Everything? No, he said quietly. Not everything. I meant it when I said I loved you. That was never a lie. But everything else was. Everything else was. Before I could respond, federal agents were surrounding us, taking statements, treating minor injuries, beginning the long process of unraveling a criminal conspiracy that had touched dozens of lives and destroyed families across multiple generations. As they led me away from the gardens, I looked back at the gazebo where Aaron had planned to propose to me again, where he'd hidden evidence that had ultimately brought down the organization responsible for his death. He'd gotten his justice in the end. The question was whether I could find mine. And whether the man I'd married in a web of lies could ever become someone I could trust with the truth. But as federal agents escorted Victor Santori from a maintenance shed where he'd been trying to hide, his hands cuffed behind his back and his empire in ruins, I realized that some questions would have to wait. Because justice, it turned out, was a complicated thing. And love was even more complicated. But sometimes, if you were very lucky and very determined, you could have both. Even if the price was higher than you'd ever imagined you'd be willing to pay. 6 months later, I sat in the same cafe where Detective Morrison had first shown me evidence of Aaron's phone records, staring at divorce papers that had been sitting untouched on the table for 20 minutes. The media had called it the trial of the decade. Victor Santori's criminal empire, exposed and dismantled through the testimonies of dozens of victims, federal investigations, and evidence that Aaron Cole had died to protect. The man who'd ordered my fiancé's death now sat in a federal prison, serving multiple life sentences for murder, racketeering, and conspiracy charges that painted a picture of corruption spanning 3 decades. Justice, it turned out, had been served. But justice and healing weren't the same thing. Mrs. Blackwell? The lawyer's voice interrupted my brooding. Have you made a decision? I looked at the papers again, a no-contest divorce that would end my marriage as cleanly and quietly as possible. Dominic had signed his portion weeks ago, along with documents that transferred half his assets to me and guaranteed I'd never want for anything material for the rest of my life. Blood money, some might call it. Compensation for the year he'd stolen from me, for the lies he'd built our relationship on, for the manipulation that had started long before we'd ever met. Mrs. Blackwell? I need a few more minutes, I said. The lawyer nodded and retreated to another table, leaving me alone with the most important decision I'd ever faced. Through the cafe's window, I could see the building where my father's company had been headquartered before Santori's people destroyed it along with so many other lives. Dad was in federal prison now too, serving a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony against Santori's organization. The last time I'd seen him was 3 months ago, when he'd tried to apologize for everything he'd done and I'd walked out before he could finish the first sentence. Some betrayals cut too deep for forgiveness. Some wounds never healed, no matter how much time passed. But others. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, the garden is beautiful this time of year. If you're ever interested in seeing what grows from ashes. D*. I stared at the message, my heart doing things I'd spent 6 months trying to prevent. Since the night at the Botanical Gardens, Dominic and I had lived in the same house but separate worlds. He'd moved into a guest wing after we'd returned from giving our testimonies to federal prosecutors, and we'd maintained the polite distance of strangers who happened to share an address and a last name. He'd never pressed me for conversation, never demanded explanations for my coldness, never tried to justify his actions beyond that single moment of honesty in the gardens. He'd simply existed in my peripheral vision, a reminder of everything I'd lost and everything I'd never been sure I'd really had. But the text suggested he was leaving. Moving on. Giving me the space to build a life without the constant reminder of his presence. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. Mrs. Blackwell? The lawyer was approaching again, clearly hoping to conclude our business. Actually, I said, standing and gathering the unsigned papers, I think I need more time to consider this. How much more time? I'll let you know. I left the cafe before he could protest, walking through streets that had become familiar over the past months. The city looked different now, cleaner somehow, as if Santori's arrest had lifted a shadow I hadn't realized was there. Construction crews were working on several developments that had been abandoned when his organization collapsed, bringing new life to neighborhoods that had been stagnant for years. Aaron's architectural firm, rebuilt with insurance money and federal assistance, was designing 3 of those projects. His vision was finally becoming reality, even though he wasn't here to see it. Some legacy was better than no legacy at all. I found myself walking toward the Botanical Gardens almost without conscious decision. The place held too many memories, first dates with Aaron, final confrontations with Santori, moments of truth that had shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. But it was also where everything had ended. Where justice had been served and secrets had finally been revealed. Maybe it was time to see what came next. The gardens looked exactly as they had 6 months ago, peaceful and timeless, as if federal shootouts and criminal conspiracies were just bad dreams that had never touched this sanctuary. The gazebo where Aaron had planned to propose again sat white and perfect in the afternoon sunlight, surrounded by flowers that had bloomed and died and bloomed again since that terrible night. And sitting on the same stone bench where I'd been held captive, reading a book with the casual air of someone who belonged there, was my husband. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, and for a moment neither of us spoke. 6 months of distance collapsed into nothing, leaving just two people who'd been through hell together and somehow survived. "You got my text," he said. "I got your text." I stopped 10 feet away, close enough for conversation but far enough to maintain the emotional distance that had kept me sane. "You're leaving." "I'm considering it." "Where would you go?" "Somewhere you wouldn't have to see me every day. Somewhere you could heal without constant reminders of what I put you through." He closed his book and set it aside, and I could see the title, Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. The same book Aaron used to read to me on lazy Sunday mornings when we'd been happy and naive and completely unaware that our lives were being orchestrated by a man seeking revenge. "Interesting choice," I said. "Perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beautiful courage," he quoted. Aaron had excellent taste in literature. "You knew he read me poetry." "I knew everything about your relationship with him. I made it my business to know." The casual admission should have angered me. Instead, it just made me tired. "Are you apologizing again? Would it matter if I was?" "I don't know. Nothing seems to matter the way it used to." He stood and took a step closer, close enough that I could see the exhaustion in his pale eyes, the weight he'd lost, the way the past months had aged him. "Elara, I need you to know something." "What?" "I've spent 6 months trying to figure out how to atone for what I did to you, how to make amends for the lies, the manipulation, the way I destroyed your life to serve my own need for justice." "And what did you conclude?" "That some things can't be fixed. Some damage is permanent." "So you're running away." "So I'm giving you the chance to build a life without me in it." I looked at him standing there in the fading light, this man who'd been the center of a hurricane that had destroyed everything I thought I knew about myself, and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Anger? Yes, that was still there, buried beneath months of numbness. Hurt? Definitely. The kind of deep, soul-level pain that came from discovering that your entire reality had been someone else's carefully constructed fiction. But underneath those familiar emotions was something else. Something I'd been trying to ignore for months. "What if I don't want you to go?" I heard myself ask. He went very still. "What? What if I don't want you to disappear into whatever new identity you planned for yourself? What if I want you to stay and figure out how to build something real from all the lies you told?" "Elara, do you still love me?" The question hung between us like a bridge spanning a chasm neither of us was sure we could cross. "Yes," he said quietly. "I've loved you since the first day I saw your photograph in Aaron's office. I've loved you through every manipulation, every lie, every moment when I hated myself for what I was doing to you. And I'll love you for the rest of my life, whether you're in it or not." "And if I asked you to stay? To try to build something honest between us?" "I'd say that you deserve better than a man who spent the last 3 years lying to you." "Maybe I do, but maybe what I deserve isn't the same as what I want." "What do you want?" It was the question I'd been asking myself for months, the one that had kept me staring at divorce papers without signing them, the one that had brought me to these gardens when I should have been moving on with my life. "I want to understand why you did it," I said. "Not the revenge part, I understand wanting justice for your family. But why me? Why fall in love with a photograph? Why build an entire operation around a woman you'd never met?" He was quiet for a long time, and when he spoke, his voice was soft with remembered pain. "Because you looked happy. In the photograph Aaron kept on his desk, you were laughing at something he'd said, and your whole face lit up with joy. After spending 3 years surrounded by death and violence and the worst things people could do to each other, I saw that photograph and remembered what it felt like to hope." "Hope for what?" "Hope that somewhere in the world, there were still people who could be that happy. Who could love that completely. Who could build lives worth protecting." "So you decided to protect me." "I decided to want what Aaron had, the life he'd built with you, the future you were planning together, the kind of love that made someone's face light up like that." He paused, struggling with words that seemed too small for what he was trying to say. "I know it was wrong. I know it was selfish and manipulative and probably psychotic. But I saw you laughing in that photograph, and I wanted to be the person who made you look like that. Even if it meant destroying the man who already did? Even then. Which is why you should sign those papers and let me disappear from your life. I walked to the gazebo and sat on its steps, looking out at the fountain where Aaron had hidden evidence that had ultimately brought down his killers. The late afternoon sun turned the water into liquid gold, beautiful and peaceful and completely at odds with the violence that had surrounded this place. I loved him, I said finally. Aaron. I loved him completely, the way you're supposed to love someone when you're planning to spend your life with them. I know. And I hated you. For months after that night, I hated you with an intensity that scared me. Every time I looked at you, I saw the man who'd orchestrated Aaron's death to satisfy his own obsession. I know that too. But then I realized something. What? Hating you was easier than facing the truth about what had grown between us. It was easier than admitting that somewhere in the middle of all your lies and manipulation, I'd started to fall in love with the man I thought you were. He went very still. Elara. I'm not finished. I stood and walked back to him, close enough to see the gold flecks in his pale eyes. The man I fell in love with was patient and protective and capable of surprising gentleness. He was haunted by the things he'd done but still fighting for what he believed was right. He was willing to risk everything to keep people safe, even when those people might never forgive him for the methods he used. That man was a fiction. A role I played to get close to you. Was he? Because everything you just told me about wanting hope, about seeing something worth protecting in a photograph, about falling in love with the idea of building a life with someone, that doesn't sound like manipulation. That sounds like truth. It doesn't matter what it sounds like. It matters what I did. What you did was terrible. Unforgivable. The kind of thing that should end any possibility of trust between us. Yes. But it doesn't. He stared at me as if I'd started speaking a foreign language. What? It doesn't end the possibility. It makes it harder, more complicated, maybe impossible to achieve. But it doesn't end it. I don't understand. I don't understand either. But I've spent 6 months trying to hate you, and I can't. I've spent 6 months trying to forget the way you kissed me on our wedding day, the way you looked at me in your study when you showed me your investigation, the way you were willing to die to keep me safe. And I can't forget any of it. Those moments were real. But they were built on a foundation of lies. Then maybe we build a new foundation. One based on truth this time. What kind of truth? I reached out and took his hands, feeling the familiar jolt of electricity that had been there from the beginning. The truth that you're a man who's done terrible things for understandable reasons. The truth that I'm a woman who's capable of loving someone despite knowing the worst things about them. The truth that we're both damaged and complicated and probably not good for each other. That's a hell of a foundation to build on. It's the only foundation we have. He looked down at our joined hands, then back at my face. What are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to stay. To try to build something honest between us, even if it takes years and even if we fail. To help me figure out how to love someone I should hate and trust someone who's lied to me about everything that mattered. And if I hurt you again? Then I'll leave. But this time it will be my choice, made with full knowledge of who you are and what you're capable of. Elara, you could have anyone. You could build a life with someone who's never lied to you, never manipulated you, never caused you the kind of pain I've caused. Yes, I could, but I don't want anyone else. I want the man who's standing in front of me right now, telling me I deserve better than what he can give me. Why? Because despite everything you've done, despite all the lies and manipulation and terrible choices, you're the only person who's ever been willing to burn down the world to keep me safe. And maybe that's not healthy, maybe it's not normal, maybe it's the kind of love that should scare me. It should scare you. It does. But it also makes me feel more alive than I've felt since Aaron died. We stood there in the garden where it had all ended, holding hands like teenagers on a first date, two people who'd been through hell together and somehow found their way to something that might be love. If we do this, he said quietly, if we try to build something real, I need you to know that I'll probably disappoint you. I'll probably make mistakes that hurt you. I'll probably struggle with telling the truth about things that matter. Probably. And you'll probably have days when you hate me for what I did to Aaron, what I did to your father, what I did to the life you thought you were going to have. Probably. And we'll probably fail completely and end up destroying each other. Probably. So why are you willing to try? I stood on my tiptoes and kissed him, soft and brief and full of promise. Because sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the worst disasters. Because I learned that love isn't just about the easy moments, it's about choosing someone even when you know exactly how much they can hurt you. And because I didn't survive losing Aaron just to spend the rest of my life afraid to love someone else. He kissed me back, deeper this time, with all the hunger and desperation and hope that had been building between us for months. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. What happens now? He asked. Now we go home. And tomorrow we start over. We learn each other's real names, real histories, real dreams for the future. We build something honest, even if it's messy and complicated and nothing like what either of us expected. Home? Unless you have somewhere else you'd rather be. No, he said, pulling me closer. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. As we walked out of the gardens together, I thought about Aaron and the love we'd shared, young and idealistic and full of plans that would never come to fruition. That love had been real and pure and everything a first love should be. But this love, complicated and hard-won and built on the ashes of terrible choices, this love was mine. Chosen with full knowledge of the cost, claimed despite every rational reason to walk away. Maybe that made it stronger. Maybe it made it more precious. Or maybe it just made it worth fighting for. 3 years later, I sat in the same botanical gardens, watching my husband play with our daughter while our son napped in his stroller beside me. The gazebo where so much had ended now hosted children's birthday parties and anniversary celebrations and marriage proposals from couples who had no idea of the violence that had once stained this peaceful place. Life, it turned out, had a way of healing even the deepest wounds if you gave it enough time. Mommy, look. Our daughter, Elena, ran toward me with a flower she'd picked, her face bright with the same joy I'd once worn in a photograph that had changed everything. It's beautiful, sweetheart, I said, tucking the bloom behind her ear. Dominic approached, slightly out of breath from chasing a 3-year-old around the gardens, but smiling in a way that made my heart skip even after all this time. Ready to go home? He asked. Always, I said, and meant it. Because we'd learned something important in the years since that terrible night when everything fell apart. Love isn't about perfection. It's about choosing someone despite their flaws, because of their strengths, and in full acceptance of the ways they'll inevitably disappoint you. It's about building something beautiful from broken pieces. It's about learning that sometimes the person who hurts you the most is also the person who can heal you the best. And it's about discovering that the strongest foundations are often built not on what was perfect from the beginning, but on what survived everything that tried to destroy it. I didn't survive you, Dominic, I thought, watching him load our children into the car with the careful attention he brought to everything that mattered to him now. I learned to live with you. And that, it turned out, had made all the difference. The end. Thank you for staying tuned and listening till the end. If you enjoy this story, kindly leave a comment on your favorite part and don't forget to subscribe.